Yo, so as this video suggests, I'm going to be reviewing the 2025 version of Snow White. And as you can guess from the title of this, it was not exactly an easy watch, but I'll get into all that in a moment. Um, Before I do that, recently I watched the old 1930s Snow White because, just watching this one, of course, put me in the mood to watch it, and I literally cannot remember when I last watched that one. And it kind of, while it wasn't my thing, I mean, because I'm not really into Disney princesses, I wasn't ever as a kid. I mean, despite being made in the 1930s, this movie definitely still is solid, the old one, the 1930s one. Like, I was just thinking about a few things that, as an adult, it just kind of dawned on me watching it that I never thought about as a kid. Like the fact that one of them was named Dopey, in the group. I mean, essentially, his friends, the other dwarves, kind of named him Retard. I mean, if you think about it, that's kind of he's clearly slow, and they kind of name him that, which is pretty weird, really, but and kind of funny in a way that more would appeal to adults. Also, another scene I thought of in the movie when I was watching it is the final scene where the dwarves are chasing the queen. And sorry if I'm giving you any spoilers, but I mean, if you don't know the plot of the original Snow White, well, spoilers, yeah, I mean, the original Snow White, it's been known for over almost a century now. But like there's that scene where they're all chasing the queen through the woods, for the final fight or whatever. And if you think about it, out of context, that sounds pretty weird. Seven angry male dwarves with like pickaxes and other weapons chasing an old woman through the woods, and then she falls off the cliff as they're chasing her. I mean, in the wrong context, I mean that kind of sounds in a hilarious way, kind of like a horror comedy. But anyways, it comparing that with this new Disney live action movie, I've just been thinking about, how the old one is still pretty solid, and it's interesting how it was, one of the first ever movies made like this, a full feature length animated film. And then comparing it now with the 2025 version that I saw this weekend. To start off with the positives, Snow White 2025. Actually, the most maligned part about this movie going into it, as many of you know, Rachel Ziegler, or Zegler, however you pronounce her name, and Gal Gadot, the two main casting choices, they generated some controversy with comments they said, mostly Rachel, about some of her comments about, you know, the old Snow White being dated, and she had that just the way she said it, like she about the princess part being cut and said it's Hollywood baby. I've watched like hundreds of hours of like The Critical Drinker and other who like maligned this movie, so that's why I was kind of interested in seeing it, just because all there was so much hate about that. And she also said, maybe a little too overly charged political comments, as did Gal Gadot about, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Though I think Gadot has some reasons since she is Israeli, but I think Zegler, as usual, is just kind of shooting her mouth off. So I understand a lot of people didn't like Rachel Zegler, but actually, she was one of the few positives of this movie. I mean, acting wise, she was pretty decent in the lead role. And Gal Gadot, honestly, while I know she has some flaws as an actress, I didn't mind her as the evil queen. I know some people did. And if nothing else, part of the reason I also saw this movie, I mean, they were both easy to look at because both Zegler and Gal Gadot are pretty hot. So that was another reason I saw this. I figured if nothing else, for an hour and a half, I could just stare at them. But sorry, I have to sneeze. It's gonna be kind of ruin the video if I sneeze in the middle of it. But anyways, the rest of this movie, however, I was pretty embarrassed to have seen it. I could definitely not convince anyone to go with me to this, and then so I went alone, and then I was the only one in the theater other than a family with their kids, and I don't know, they had like two or three fairly young kids, and one thing, to start off with, for those of you who think that this movie was just for kids and that, that's why adults would like it, well, no, I can tell you from firsthand experience, both because of the content I saw in the movie and because of what I witnessed of the kids who were there, this movie was not well designed for children because those kids did not pay an ounce of attention in the movie. They were running around the aisles, playing tag, wanting candy, just about anything other than the movie itself. They were paying attention to the previews before the movie of like the other kids' movies like Lilo and Stitch and some other dumb animated movie. but they didn't pay any attention to the movie itself. So no, actually, this movie was too boring for adults. It was definitely too boring for young kids. Some of the dialogue and the jokes were kiddish in nature, but on the whole, was supposed to be a family movie, but it was probably a nobody movie. Also, before I go any further, there might be a few spoilers here or there. I'm not going to give out, I'd say, what I consider the movie's biggest spoiler. There's really not much to give out because a lot of it is based off the plot of the old Snow White. And again, if you don't know that plot, that's been around basically since all of us have been alive. So, I'll try to avoid any major spoilers, but there might be just a few here or there. So, forewarning about that. But I don't think you're missing much, trust me. Anyways, going forward, the movie, for something that had hundreds of millions of dollars invested in it, it still did not look particularly good. It didn't look completely terrible, but it didn't look good. I actually wish it had looked worse because maybe the movie would have been better as a hate watch then. Like, some people, like myself, do love to hate watch some movies. Like, there's this old 2008 movie called Yeti that I thought when I saw it was made back in the 80s, and it's just wonderful because it's so awful with the acting, the plot. The Yeti in it looks like Jim Carrey's Grinch from 2001, except bigger, whiter, and weirder. It's hilarious, even though it wasn't meant to be. It's a horror that takes itself seriously. But this movie wasn't even a particularly good hate watch, other than just a few scenes here or there. Mostly, if I had to pick one thing about this movie, like I said, I already picked the thing I like, which is probably Ziegler and Gadot's acting. The thing I liked the least about it was the Seven Bandits, who, as many people have suggested, the Seven Bandits that were kind of shoehorned into this movie that are Snow White's allies against the Queen, if you want to call them that or whatever. They were probably meant to be like the Seven Dwarves originally, but I think that then they decided that wasn't going to fly, and thank goodness, because the Seven Bandits were easily my least favorite part of this movie. Talk about Snow White and the Seven Dorks. God, they were annoying. I was rooting so hard for the Queen's soldiers to slaughter them when they had this battle scene between them and the Seven Bandits. One of whom Snow White takes a love interest in. He's, oh God, talk about a bad romance. It's just painful to watch. And of course, they still have the Seven Dwarves there too, the CGI dwarves, but they're completely undermined by the bandits. And their CGI, as many people have suggested from the trailers, looks pretty awful. Though actually, the more you watch it throughout the movie, the dwarves' CGI kind of grows on you a little. Not that it's good, but you just don't mind it. But the rest of the movie, the animation, and especially the songs, I don't know, that's a little different. I will just consider that part of the overall production value. Maybe that's more of the dialogue category. I don't know. The songs were terrible. I hated the songs in this movie. Like Joker Folie à Deux, for many of you who don't know, that one was a musical and definitely not great musical numbers. But at least the few songs they peppered in there were bearable. Lady Gaga's a great singer, obviously, and the Joaquin Phoenix songs were terrible, but they were short and brief and got out of your system real quick. I can't say that for Snow White. These songs were loud, in your face, your typical over-the-top Disney numbers, and they sucked. Oh, I hated them so much. Music does not make a movie better if it's bad music. Okay, and the worst part is you could tell in some ways the music, like the people writing it and singing it, thought it was good. Oh. But anyways, I'm not really a musical person anyway, so. But going on, moving on, the bandits were the worst part. Next worst part was, the singing and the music. The third worst part was, the production value for having hundreds of millions of dollars. It still did not look very good. CGI dwarves, too much color, too much. Everything was CGI. It basically was just another animated movie, just CGI and not old school animation. So, this movie on many levels failed. And overall, the one thing about it that was truly just, the overarching thing that all of these things encompassed was just the overall plot was just horrible. It was long, it was bloated. They took out many parts of the original and changed it, but for the worse, not for the better. For instance, the scene in the final, or the old Snow White where they're chasing this queen through the woods, the angry dwarves are, and, spoiler, but, she does die, when she falls off the cliff. If you hadn't, it's kind of an intense scene for a kid's movie and relatively exciting. You don't know what's gonna, don't want to know what's gonna happen. And again, I just spoiled it for some, but if you haven't seen it, again, this movie's been around since the sands of time, so I mean, I don't feel that bad. But point being, um, it that was one of the better scenes, And in this new one, they change it for something else, which I won't give away because it's one of the only plot lines. But we'll just say this: it sucked. It was stupid. It was lame. It had very little, if anything, to do with the dwarves and very little to do with Snow White herself. Which, by the way, I thought she was supposed to be like this empowered girl boss in this new movie. Really, she still was kind of a damsel in distress throughout half the movie. I mean, we'll just say the prince does save her. I won't give away the exact way he saves her, but I mean there is one scene in it he saves her, and they do have the kiss scene that I guess they had to keep that in. But I mean, she really still is constantly having her act cleaned up by all the people around her. The dwarves rarely do anything other than just sing dumb musical numbers, but the seven bandits, they aid her on several occasions. I hated those bandits so much; they were so dumb. I know I've said that, but I just hated them. Um, but anyways, yeah, I mean, they didn't really do a great job of making her into, a good female heroine. But anyways, that again, just another negative thing. There were a few funny moments here or there that were unintentional funny moments, like how when the dwarfs first find Snow White sleeping in their house, unlike in the original where they gawk at how pretty she is, in this one they all run off screaming. Even though I do think Rachel Zegler is kind of pretty, I mean, you have to admit there's a little bit of humor in that they're so revulsed by her that they think she's a monster. But oh, and on that note too, Rachel Zegler, another thing that generated controversy about this movie. Obviously, she's Colombian, and Snow White was originally supposed to be white, German. I think German, at least in the original one. And they race swap her. They also race swap the Huntsman. He's black in this. I don't really care. I mean, I'm not just trying to like be. I don't know. I'm not trying to take sides really on this one way or the other. I think it was a little excessive the way Disney race swaps some of their characters, and they're trying too hard to be, politically correct, or as some people call it, woke. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think it's automatically bad that they put in somebody that's another race. I don't know. I think people make too big a deal of it one way or the other, just to be blunt with you. If they hadn't race swapped her, I think it'd be fine. If they had, it's not a big deal one way or the other. So I think that was a thing people just made too big a deal about going into the movie. But, and about a lot of Disney movies for that matter. I mean, yeah, Disney puts women and minorities into terrible movies. I don't know if that's necessarily doing women and minorities a big favor, But anyways, on the whole, obviously, if I had to rate this movie on a scale of 1 to 10, or 1 to negative 10, negative 1 to negative 10, with actually a negative 10 being better than like say a 0 or 1, because that means it's a really good hate watch. I would say this movie was like a 2.5, maybe a 3 at the absolute most generous. The only reason I give it at 1.5 points on that would be for Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot's acting, and honestly, they're just easy to look at. And another point for just the hundreds of millions of dollars Disney poured into at least making it look moderately bearable. So on the whole, 2.5. The sad thing is this movie, I mean, had they just done a few things differently, it actually could have been pretty good. I mean, had they just kept some of the original plot points, had they just, not made it so long and bloated, had they, gotten rid of the stupid seven bandits and kept just the seven dwarves in, and they didn't have to alter it that much. They could have kept most of the original plot in. It still would have been mostly a win. That's the main reason Lion King made a ton of money, is that they still kept a lot of the original plot in, and people still saw it, even though it was really bad. And for that matter, I mean, just FYI, it wasn't like I was greatly looking forward to Snow White. It's just the reason I knew it'd be like a lot of the Disney live actions. I just was curious because of all the hate the movie had gotten, and like I mentioned, Zegler and Gadot, if I'm pronouncing her name right, are both easy on the eyes. But I've hated almost every Disney live action movie. I mean, I hated Aladdin the worst of all, because that one I actually was kind of looking forward to, because I liked Aladdin a lot as a kid growing up, and I thought maybe that one would be at least bearable. But oh my gosh, I hated that movie so much. I loved the giant cobra scene as a kid where Jafar turns into the cobra and fights with Aladdin. And then they had Iago turn into a giant parrot monster or whatever. God, that was stupid. And all the acting in the movie was terrible. Will Smith as the genie Obviously, he wasn't as good as Robin Williams, but he was actually the best actor still in the movie by a long shot. The rest of them were just terrible. But, not to get sidetracked, most of the Disney live actions have been terrible. I saw The Lion King, Aladdin, a little bit of Beauty and the Beast, which was all the live actions, probably the best one, but still not great. And I've heard Cinderella was the best, but I have no interest in really seeing it. And of course, the really bad ones I haven't seen, like Pinocchio, Peter Pan and Wendy, the ones that people warn are so bad they'll give you an aneurysm. I mean, it's kind of it's kind of ironic. I think, like so I read an internet comment somewhere and I think someone was right. The first Snow White kind of kicked Disney into high gear way back in the 1930s, and this one could be foreshadowing the downfall of Disney. I mean, Disney isn't over yet, but I'm beginning to think their days might be numbered. I mean, looking at this and some of the other just horrible things Disney's been shitting out over the last some years. I mean, look at the way they've depleted Marvel. Look at the way they depleted Star Wars. Even if you like some of the things that have been made since Marvel or Star Wars, since Disney took over. I mean, I like, well, not very much of it because I'm not a big Marvel, and I don't like any of the Disney Star Wars. I mean, surely you have to recognize that overall the quality is deteriorating on both of those, and that is because of Disney and their, insistence on doing what they do to all their properties and basically just turning it into the most generic, bland, boring, snooze fest alive and hoping they can still trick people into going and seeing it just based off of nostalgia, for Star Wars or for the Disney movies or whatever. And eventually this train has got to run out of, steam. They've got to eventually, eventually it's all got to give somewhere because I don't know very many people at all that have liked any of the Disney live actions. And increasingly their audience, the people who like the Marvel and Star Wars, is dwindling. For instance, my dad and brother, they do like that kind of stuff. Most of the, they like a lot of the Disney, Star Wars, Marvel stuff, but even they've been really dropping off here in the 2020s with like stuff like the Acolyte for Star Wars. And, my dad hated the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie, even though he liked the series on the whole. They seem to be losing interest on the whole in, some of the different Marvel series. And I've never had a big interest in them since Disney took over. So I think hopefully, I honestly kind of almost want to see Disney be bought out by somebody in the future or get its act together. I mean, the company's been around for a long time. It might get its act together, but it's really, I know it's not a big deal. It's just movies, and I'm not trying to be overly dramatic about this or preachy, but it's been a long American icon for a long time, and Disney needs to somehow get it together, or they just need to go up in smoke and be bought out by someone because they're disgracing their own legacy with a lot of these movies they're putting out. They're destroying other good intellectual properties like Star Wars, and I think it does make somewhat of a difference because they are still the biggest producer of a lot of entertainment in both the U.S. and the world. So I don't know. Not to get, I'll stop getting too preachy because this is just about a dumb Snow White movie. But anyways, yeah, like I said, I saw the Snow White movie, and obviously I didn't like it that much. I knew what I was getting myself into, though. I had watched hundreds of hours of hate, which is kind of why I decided to watch this, because I was just curious. And, if you feel the same urge, to scratch that itch and just, get the hate watch out of your system, you've been warned, and I mean, you'll probably have the same reaction I did. You'll be embarrassed to have seen it and think, well, at least it's out of my system now. But if you actually are just on the fence and curious and you don't really have, thoughts about it one way or the other, definitely don't waste your time with it. Just a complete, shit show, other than maybe just moderately decent acting. And other than that, I can't say anything else. So, just kind of a random, rant video. I've been making a lot recently about different movies and stuff like that, but that's because I'm too tired to make really serious videos right now. Not to go on too much about my life, but I think I'm going to be changing jobs and moving yet again here. I have to admit, I absolutely hate my current job with Bank of America. It's just absolute misery, and I don't think I can last there much longer. So who knows? The next time you see me broadcasting, I may be in Salt Lake City, Wilmington, North Carolina. At least at the moment, those are the two other most likely locations. Maybe I'll still be here in Phoenix. Who knows? So, as usual, thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye.